Welcome to the ID Den podcast, the show for teachers ready to step outside the classroom and into their next chapter. I'm your host, Charity Bosch, and I know firsthand how overwhelming it can feel to leave teaching behind. Whether you're exploring instructional design, navigating corporate culture, or just figuring out your first steps, this show is your roadmap. Each episode will tackle the real challenges, share practical strategies, and prove that your teaching skills are exactly what the world needs, just in a different setting. Let's turn that classroom expertise into your career advantage. In today's episode, we have a guest with us. I'm so excited to welcome Abby Rose Green. Abby is a mindset coach, but more than just a mindset coach, she is also a Down syndrome inclusion advocate and a mother of 3 who shares her life and knowledge on Instagram. She believes that we can all wear the titles that we love most without sacrificing ourselves along the way. And I am so glad to have her here today with us to talk a little bit about some of that mindset coaching, especially when it comes to teachers. So Abby, if you could just start by telling us a little bit about your background in coaching.
Yeah. So I was always that friend that when people came to me, I always wanted to help them. When I was 4 years old, 14 years old, 24 years old, it was one of those things where the open door policy was just very evident with my friends and my family. I even remember my aunt, who's one of my closest friends, even though she's a lot older than I am, she would come to me and just ask me, like, what do you think about this? And it was always just this back and forth conversation. But there got to be a point where I couldn't help with the end transformation. I could give my 2 cents, but just like any friend could. And you might be thinking too, like, yeah, my friends come to me for advice and, recommendations, but I couldn't help with their total transformation. A lot of times they would fall right back into the same habits. They would get down on themselves. The negative self-talk would happen. And I also noticed it with myself. I was dealing with several different things that I could make a lot of progress on, but then I would backtrack on every single time. And it wasn't until I hired my own coach. I went through therapy. I went through, I had a good support system. I did all those things and it was very helpful. But then I hired my own coach and I realized, oh, okay, there's questions and prompts that coaches ask that a friend doesn't ask, that your, husband or wife doesn't ask, that even a therapist doesn't quite ask. And that's when I decided that I wanted to have a degree and take a degree in coaching. So I went to the University of Wisconsin, Madison, and got a degree in coaching. So it's mindset and life coaching. I did that probably 3 or 4 years ago now and have been mentoring people, coaching people, consulting people. I kind of do a combination of all 3 ever since. So it's been really cool just to be able to see the differences it can make in my friendship conversations with my clients and then also with myself.
Yes. And I am one of your clients.
Yes, you are.
You were my first coach. And yes, that was very necessary. Super glad that I invested in that early in my journey because it was completely invaluable. So I can definitely speak to that. And it's very interesting. Yeah, you hear a lot. Like I also have people that come to me for advice and things, but definitely working with you, I could see how like, oh, it goes beyond just like a friend giving advice. It really gets you thinking and reflecting and analyzing. And I think that's a really cool journey to how you got there. Have you worked with many teachers changing their mindset, and what has that looked like?
Yeah, I sure have. And it's funny that you asked that question, Charity, because the people that we hired for our company for a while there, we were only hiring previous teachers because we knew how good teachers were. So I worked with them in a professional capacity with having them be employees and contractors of the businesses that I run. But then also many teachers have come to me for imposter syndrome, for confidence, for, hey, I don't know if I can do this anymore because I am burned out as a teacher, for help with, hey, can you help me just be more positive about my teaching career? And I think that those conversations and those coaching conversations, and then also the relationship with having employees, it softens my heart to teachers because it is a different industry. I mean, every industry obviously has its differences, but there are so many teachers out there and every single human being has experience with a teacher. I shouldn't say every single human being. Most of the people who are listening have had experience with a teacher. You had a teacher at some point in your life. And so it's one of those things that you've gone through all these years with having these teachers, with seeing these teachers, with having them run the classroom. But then until you actually talk to a teacher and see inside their mind, it's a completely different route. It's a completely different animal. And yeah, my heart definitely softened when having those conversations with teachers.
Yeah, definitely. I always say that I think before people start like a professional career, they need to work in hospitality, they need to work in food service, they need to work in a classroom and see what it's actually like. Because it's being a parent myself, especially now having grade school aged kids, it's just completely different. When I was a teacher, it was one of my favorite things to have parents like volunteer in the classroom, because every single time when they would leave, they say, I don't know how you do this. Like, I was only here for 20 minutes and it was pure anarchy and chaos. And I'm like, welcome. So,
well, and Charity, I'm glad that you bring that part up, because I think that so many people, they come into my coaching session and they say, okay, Abby, I am burned out. I want to leave the teaching profession, or I think I want to. Maybe I want to fall back in love with it, but I am only a teacher. And they say that to me. They're like, I'm only a teacher. And I push back on them. So one thing with a coach versus talking to a friend is that a really good friend isn't going to be on your side with everything. But as a friend, we always want to be on their side, right? We want them to feel supported. In coaching relationships, yes, I want my clients to feel supported, but I do ask them the hard questions. And I literally ask them, I say, okay, yes, your experience is in teaching, correct? Okay, so let's talk about the true versus the false. Yes, your education is in teaching. Okay, that is true. Okay, maybe even back to your childhood dream. You always wanted to be a teacher. That could also be true. But the fact that you're only a teacher, I am calling you out on that one. That is so far from the truth, because I even look at you coming into this session right now and I see a mother, I see a partner, I see a friend, I see a sister, I see a daughter, I see somebody who is really good at time management. I see somebody who can control the chaos with 20 different children with just a snap of a finger or a funny little rhyme. I see somebody who is organized, more organized than you can even imagine. I see somebody who is motivating. You are inspiring. And when you're inspiring to a 6-year-old or a 16-year-old, you guys, that takes talent. That takes talent to be inspiring to those types of people over and over and over again. And I see somebody who you can look at a student and you can look at the student sitting right next to them in a desk. And you know that they need 2 completely different plans. And somehow in your hours at your job, among the chaos, among the motivating, among the time management, you are able to get those 2 students on paths that fit them. Like, what other profession, what other person in an employer? I've worked in corporate America. There are not people, I'm telling you, in the corporate situations that I was at, that can do that can leave that big of an impact on somebody. And that's just in the student realm. Like, take that and those skills and pull them into this next path, pull them into what you want to do, pull them into a different type of teaching or a different location, a different feel. And you have yourself a really incredible future.
Yes, I love that. And I love that you brought up those students, and teachers pour so much into their students that I feel like they often will feel guilty or sometimes just downright forget prioritizing their own needs, because it's so ingrained as you as a teacher that, it's them above you and everyone else. I mean, I remember one of the pivotal moments that led to me leaving the classroom was I was pregnant with my very first, and it was getting towards the end of my pregnancy. I was probably 8 months along, and I worked in a really rough Title I school, and I had a desk thrower. And I remember being very pregnant, and he got mad and he stood up and he put his hands on his desk. And I had to, in a split second, decide, am I going to protect myself and my unborn child? Or am I going to put myself and my unborn child in harm's way to protect the rest of my classroom? Like, teachers have to make such difficult decisions that it's easy to lose sight of yourself. So how do you work with teachers to work through that mindset of being able to prioritize their own needs and put themselves first when they've had a whole career of putting everyone else first?
Oh, and it's even just going to the bathroom. Like, I always ask teachers, how many times did you go to the bathroom today? Because if you haven't if you haven't gotten up to go pee in between your classes, like, there's an issue there. And we know the saying so well that it's cliche. You can't pour from an empty cup. Yet you teachers are literally walking around with bone dry Stanleys. You're walking around with a bone dry Stanley. And I'm going to use this because I don't know if this is going to be on video, but I have a Stanley in my hand. It's a 40-ounce Stanley. This thing is heavy. This thing is clunky. This thing has a straw that doesn't quite fit in there, right? That everything's shaky. If you're walking around with this Stanley and there's no water inside your water bottle, you only have one hand to do anything with anything else. You have one hand and you're off kilter. You are already off balance because you're holding onto this huge water bottle with this one hand. So literally not taking care of yourself is limiting your own self. It's limiting the way that you can actually take care of other people. And I know that sometimes with change, because I see this with my clients all the time, they need somebody else to be the outcome in order for them to make a change. So if you're in that position right now, when you are only thinking about other people, you literally cannot work with your full capability. You cannot use two hands and your full skill set if you're not taking care of yourself. It's literally impossible. You are going to burn out. You are going to end this. Like, this is not going to work out. Like, you're not going to be able to show up for work. I am somebody who has an autoimmune condition from working too hard. So I understand a thing or two about burnout. And I can tell you that, yes, you might be able to do it for a couple of days. You might be able to do it for a couple of months or even a couple of years. But I'm telling you that that is a recipe for you to all of a sudden not be able to go any further, because your body will tell you that you cannot do this anymore. And it will tell you in the most extreme ways. And so I do share that not as a scary tale, but just as a cautionary tale of, you might be able to, but just because you can doesn't mean you should. And so if you are a person that's like, I want to help these individuals as long as I can, know that at some point your body's going to stop. And it's not, I mean, I'm alive and well and moving around, but I'm on a lot of supplements. I have a lot of doctor visits. I have a lot of expenses. I had to quit that entire corporate career and move careers because my body literally didn't let me. And if you're somebody who you can take self-care as something that every single human being should be allowed to do, the way you feel and the way you can just move about your day and the mental clarity and the positivity, it feels so good to just be able to take care of yourself a little bit. And if you're coming from somebody who has not taken care of yourself for a while, or put yourself second or third or last for a while, even little tiny things like making a lunch and actually eating it, going for a walk instead of grading your papers when you have those extra bits of time, going to bed at a decent time instead of watching hours and hours of Netflix. I mean, fill in the blank for the things that you could be doing. But when you start to make those small changes and you start to notice how good you feel, you kind of want to do more of those changes. I'm just guessing, Charity, that we're talking to a group of women right now and group of men and women, group of teachers that are in this position that they haven't put themselves first or second or even third in so long. They don't even realize how good they're supposed to feel as a human being. And that's a very hard place to be.
Yeah, definitely. I love that you brought up water, because I am the most hydrated I have ever been in my life since leaving the classroom, because it's so true. Like, people say, I'll see on Instagram, like a girl math or whatever, the cost of this lipstick, blah, blah, blah. And teacher math is, if I drink this now, I'll probably have to go to the bathroom at this time, which at that time, I'm going to be in the middle of a lesson. Oh, and my principal's coming in for an observation. Yeah, I better not drink that water. So it's just crazy to me that, especially in that situation, like, teachers can't even hydrate their bodies appropriately because you have to be constantly thinking about that. It was wild to me. I had gotten like a smart water bottle that tracks like your ounces and stuff when I first left the classroom. And I was like mortified at how little water I would naturally drink. Like, it took a lot of mindset work to just drink water like a normal human being after I left the classroom, because you're in that environment and you have to live that way. And I love that you brought up the burnout, because it is everywhere in education right now. I know personally, I've stayed in touch with a lot of my former colleagues. I went to a retirement party at the end of this last school year, and I was talking to one of my co-teachers from my third grade team before, and she was like, this person is leaving to go do this other thing. And then one of them, she was a young woman still, probably in her fourth or fifth year of teaching. And she was taking a year off to like move across the country and like go on a sabbatical essentially, because like she couldn't handle it, understandably so. And she was like, I gotta just like literally run away to the other side of the country for a year and like try and get my mind in the right place. And I see it everywhere on social media and the news, people I know. Like, what role does your mindset play in either contributing to or protecting against that teacher burnout?
Yeah, and this one's tricky because people will say, just have a positive mindset and everything will be fine, right?
Mm-hmm.
And is there some truth to it? There's some truth to it. Like, if you're walking around, you wake up and you say, I'm going to have a bad day. Chances of you having a good day are very slim, right? So there is some truth to it that if you look for the good, you will see more good. If you look for the bad, you will see more bad. But when I talk to teachers and people that are really experiencing burnout and, the happy vibes and just feel good isn't really working because it can only last so much and can only do so much as far as impact. Instead of mindset being for positivity, I like to say mindset shifts for possibility. And the possibility is endless, right? So where positivity is, that's just happy, that's just joy. Possibility is kind of a mountain range. It goes up, it goes down, it goes up, it goes down, but there's just so much abundance. And it feels good, not because it's always happy. It feels good, not because it's always full of joy and peace. It feels good because you feel accomplished. You feel success. You feel like you're making an impact on the world. And with teaching, you're not going to always have good days. Okay. I'm not going to get on here and pretend that you're always going to have a good day. You can't mindset shift your way into always having a good day. But if you think about the mindset shift of all of this that I'm going through right now, all of these challenges, all of these mistakes, all of these learning lessons, all of these good things that are also part of it, they're all part of this overall possibility that can really start to make teachers just think about what they're doing or what they're going to do next. Because there's just so much possibility with teachers. Like I said before, the woman who came to us to work for the Herself podcast for a very long time, she was coming from teacher burnout. And she goes, I've been a listener. I love what you're doing. I just want to be part of it. Like, what can I do? Kind of a deal. And she was able to retire her teaching job in order to come work for the Herself podcast. And it was just so cool to see because it wasn't easy at the beginning. She had to learn a few new skills. She had never been in the podcast industry and Instagram influencer industry before. But when I tell you, she learned so quickly and had these systems in place that when she left to then do a new career, which she's doing some amazing stuff with Bar 3 right now, it is so neat to see how she was able just to hand off to our next employee, because that's also something that doesn't normally happen, especially in the influencer world. People don't create plans to just hand off to the next contractor. And having her teacher background, she did that just like knowing in her mind, like, oh yeah, I'm going to be here for the next 2 months. I'll create this. And here's the videos. Here's the spreadsheets. Here's everything that you need to know. So it was just so cool watching her go through that process. And I thought about her relationship and chatted with her before this interview just to be like, hey, like, where are you now? We still chat probably at least once a week because we're such good friends. And I think about that teacher mentality so much that she definitely came into it knowing it wasn't always going to be positive, but knowing that there was definitely possibility at the end of it.
I love that. That comes from sub planning, calling out a skill here. That's transferable in a way that, like, as you have to always be prepared that if you wake up puking, you have to have stuff ready to go, like at the last minute, So a lot of teachers will have like a little portable filing tote thing that they just keep just things in to be able to say, I'm throwing up today. I can't make it in. Go to this folder in this location, coaching, co-teaching person, and pull out these things. And the sub plan's already written. I remember when I got ready for my maternity leave, I had to plan ahead 6 weeks worth of content and write out lesson plans and do all of that work. And that's something that's huge, especially if teachers are looking to go towards a role that has any sort of like project management type stuff. Like, it's beautiful. It's a
project management,
transition.
100%.
People get scared because like, yes, project management. Oh, I have to have a PMP and I have to. No, you have way more than anyone that could go through a college degree and get a PMP have, because you've lived it. You've had to do all of that.
You've lived it with
time. And that's just
right. With a bunch of uncertainty too. Like, you've lived with all these uncertainty. Like, I mean, in every career, obviously there's uncertainty, but there's not 22 different individual uncertainties that could at any minute pop up and change the way that you're doing your day. Like, you are doing that with the uncertainty all around you and are still making it work. So if you feel like you're frazzled, yeah, you are. You're definitely frazzled because you're doing so much on a daily basis.
Yeah. I think I read an article that said teachers make more decisions in a day than anyone, like any other profession, even like than a surgeon, like, has to make, because you're just, it's constant decision making, problem solving, analyzing. And again, a lot of great skills that transfer out of the classroom, but it's hard sometimes to see those things. So if we could start giving people some practical strategies, maybe starting with that mindset, right? Not that toxic positivity. We've all encountered that. Be happy, be grateful you're alive, right? And it's like, well, like, that's not helpful. That doesn't change my day and how things are going. What are some simple mindset practices that teachers could start implementing even tomorrow, even in the middle of a chaotic school day when you just want to throw in the towel and walk out the door and say bye. Ways to start looking towards that possibility sort of thinking rather than just stay positive, just stay positive.
Yeah. So I'm going to give two that are really fast and that you can do literally anywhere. You can be in the car, you can be in the middle of a classroom, you can be preparing, you can be, you can feel your heart starting to beat and you're worried about the panic setting in. And it's the first one I want to talk about is the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, where you literally are going to just get into your senses, and you can even invite your students to do it. I do this when I'm in the car. I have car anxiety. If it's a loud noise in the car, I instantly go into this just like a little bit fight or fight mode, and my heart starts beating. And I tell my kids, I'm like, okay, guys, we're going to 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 this. And it's literally just looking around and saying 5 things that you can see. And you can do it in your head. You don't even have to do it out loud, but it might be like water bottle, glasses, notes, Charity's face, computer, keys, and just saying 5 things you see, 4 things you can hear. And that really makes you get quiet. And that second one, the first one, and they do it in the right order, because the first one, you're kind of a little bit shaky. You're all over the place. The second one with the 4 things you can hear, it literally makes you quiet down and actually hear it. 3 things that you can feel. So it might be the clothing on your skin, the hair on the back of your neck, how your ring feels on your hand, your feet inside your shoes. 2 things that you can taste might be the water that you just had because we're drinking more water. Might be the toothpaste that's still on your teeth, a little bit of breakfast, gum that's in your mouth, and then 1 thing that you can smell. And you just do that. It takes 30 seconds. Okay. So when we say it out loud, it actually takes longer than when you can do it in your head. Right. And you just spend that time. And at the end of it, the classroom is more calm. You are more calm. If it's just you doing it, you are more calm and you can take on more. And that it's a way to help your mind. So is it a mindset shift exactly? No, in the coaching world, that wouldn't be exactly, but it's a strategy that we use to just bring everything in. And then one thing that I like to do with mindset shifts is there's so much. I'm a very, very type A person. If this, then this, right? So if I say clap your hands 3 times, then all the students clap your hands 3 times, right? Okay. Sometimes that happens. We want it to happen every single time, but does it happen the if then every single time in the teacher world? It doesn't. So I like to say, what if instead? So in your mind, if there is chaos in the classroom, if the if then doesn't work, I want you to get creative in your mind and say, what if? And this could be, I've had this conversation with a teacher and I asked her that one, and this was what she had said. She goes, because she had a particularly rowdy classroom and she was thinking about switching grades completely because she's like, I can't do this anymore. Middle school is too hard for me. Maybe if I went back down to 2nd grade or to kindergarten, maybe I went up to high school, right? Like, and the grass is always greener, right? You can always think it's like, oh, well, maybe if I went up to high school, then they would be more mature. But she's like, I can't do this 7th grade math anymore. And I said, okay, so not knowing what the 7th grade math looks like, okay, what's your if then? And she goes, I do the same rhyme every single time. It worked for the first 3 weeks of school, and then it stopped working. And then I said, okay, so then what if? She goes, well, what if I stood on top of my desk and started doing a funny dance? I'm like, what if you did that? What if you, in front of a whole bunch of 7th graders, the teacher, this super cute, super fun teacher, stood on her desk and started doing the Macarena? What would happen? And she goes, you know what? I'm going to give it a try. That classroom, give her, I mean, I think that at one point they gave her a standing ovation. Like they stood up. So it got a little bit rowdy for a second. But she goes, if the normal things aren't going to work, you guys, we are going to start to get creative here. And not that it changed the classroom entirely, but it made her feel more fun in that moment. It made her mind all of a sudden look to, hey, I can get the attention of these kids. It might not be through a funny rhyme or through clapping my hands, but if I do something that really attracts them, what if I kept on doing those things? So that was one of the things that we just kept on doing throughout the sessions of, okay, maybe it's in the cafeteria. They're not getting in line in the cafeteria. Maybe it's they're not actually leaving their desks. Maybe the kids aren't coming in on time. Instead of if then, so like if the kid doesn't show up on time, then they go to the principal's office. Wasn't working anymore. Okay, what if instead they had to sit and they had to stand next to you in front of the classroom for the first 5 minutes? Would that change something? Okay, what if? And every single person, every single student obviously is going to need something different. But what can you do to actually help each individual student in those situations and help you learn to be part of it more, to be present more, and to enjoy it more?
Yeah, I love that. I think people often hear what if and they think about like the negative, like what ifs, what if this happens and then this happens. And I love how that's a different take on that. And you're looking at, well, what if this, like, let's play with that. Let's have some fun with that.
And actually have some fun with it.
Yes. I love that. That's a great tip. How do you help teachers separate their sense of self-worth from their students' performance or behavior? And your example was perfect because I know when I was a teacher and those difficult kids, like the desk thrower, there's so much that like you start to internalize, like maybe it's me, maybe I'm the problem, maybe what I'm doing is wrong, maybe, and you start to internalize it to yourself. So how can you help them separate yourself and your self-worth from those difficult situations, those difficult behaviors, their students' test scores? I know that's another thing that's a big thing of like, which I hate. I'm so against standardized testing. I could do a whole episode on that. But, you know, a lot of times, like we had our third grade team and we were lock and step and we were planning together and we were doing this. But at the end of the year, someone had to have the lowest test scores, and you always never wanted to be the one with the lowest test scores. And so I know that that's a common struggle of separating your self-worth from performance, from behaviors. How do you help guide teachers through that?
I have such a heart for this because I am also a mom of 3 kids, 3 very different kids. And so with the first, I read 27 baby books while pregnant. I had everything down. It took us a while to get pregnant, so I was so thankful for it. And think about this as like the first couple of years of teaching, when you're so thankful for the job, you're full of energy, everything's working out. And that's what it was like with our first. We had a challenge, we figured it out. We had a challenge, we figured it out. And it was kind of by the book. And then our second kiddo came along and nothing was by the book. nothing was by the book. And it was so hard to look at that and think, I'm doing everything right. What am I now doing wrong that is not working for this kiddo? And then our third came along and he has Down syndrome. And talk about completely changing the entire script on everything. All of a sudden, developmental delays are behind. And as somebody who is type A, ahead of the game, like very high achiever, straight A's, through college, having somebody with even a slight developmental delay, I'm like, hold on a minute here. No, he is going to be at the top of his class with speech and with physical therapy, with occupational therapy. It just doesn't work that way. You can try as hard as you can. And on the other end, it might not work that way. And I like to think of it as going to an Airbnb and making eggs. Okay. This is a very simple analogy here. We're at an Airbnb and we're making eggs. Okay. You are using a new pan. The pan might work. The pan might work out great. You look into the cupboard, you try to grab your nonstick cooking spray, whatever you're using. They don't have the same stuff you use at home. So you're thinking, okay, these eggs could turn out just as they do at home, or you could do literally exactly every single thing you do at home, but you're using a different kind of spray, a different oven, and a different pan. And all those variables are your students. Okay. Every single student comes with a different background, with a different household, with a different experience in school, much less in life. They come with different skills, with different strengths, with different weaknesses. They come with different challenges, with different things that light them up. The cooking eggs in an Airbnb is so much like the variables that you're facing in a classroom. Sometimes it might turn out just as you planned. And sometimes you might do everything exactly right, and it just doesn't work out exactly as you had planned. But is it your fault? Is it your fault that the pan isn't working out and you burn the eggs a little tiny bit? No, that's not your fault. You did everything right with the things that you had in mind. Do you have to make some changes? Probably. But in that same breath, having to make a change for every single piece and every single human being and every single student, that's a lot of pressure to put on yourself. So I just want to step back and just give yourself a big hug for even making any type of changes among these students that you have. Finding the exact perfect plan. And for the perfectionists out there, again, my heart goes out to you because I am one of them. It is the hardest for people like us because you want every single one of them to excel in the biggest way. But an A and perfect attendance and knowing the material 100%, that might not be the goal for every student. And even internally for that student, their goal or what they think of as success might be something completely different. It might be feeling more confident in math or having a buddy that they can work with and communicate with. It might be just learning pieces of it that they can finally use in trade school or in their future career. Every single student's idea of a goal and success is different. So your worth and self-worth being put onto the overall definition of success, standardized testing is a perfect example of like, this is what success is. And that's just not the truth, right? It's just not the truth. So take your self-worth away from that because their definition is different. So your definition should also be different.
Yeah. I love that. And that's such a great analogy. I had plenty of people in my building that had, one teacher had, I think, four filing cabinets. And she'd be like, oh, I'm going to pull out this worksheet that I've used for the last 20 years. And anytime I moved into a classroom, I was like, get the filing cabinet out of here because what works for this year's group of students might not even work next year. So I'm not going to hold on to these papers that are going to turn yellow in my filing cabinet, because that's such a great point to remember that every kid is different. Every group of kids every year is different, and you're the constant, and it's easy to try and put everything on yourself. But at the end of the day, you're given different variables every single time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I had that conversation with one of my coaching clients, and she came back and she goes, Abby, I know you talked about eggs because I do eat eggs almost every morning. She's like, but I think of it more as a marshmallow. And I'm like, interesting. She's like, because some people have like the really, really fancy sticks that they get, that they have the metal thing and they're all retractable and everything. Some people just go into the yard and they grab a stick. Some people are just using their friend's stick because they don't want to go out there and do it themselves. And she goes, and then the end variable is that some people like a golden brown. Some people just pop them in their mouth right out of the bag. Some people like them burned to a crisp. They eat the outside and they burn them to a crisp again. So, and I'm like, you know what? The marshmallows, yes, like in every single person, like your idea of success is having a very burned marshmallow that you can continue eating. Our youngest son, he doesn't even want to put it on there. He wants to sit back and not even just be part of the s'more making, but he just wants to pop them into his mouth a couple at a time. And that's his idea of success. So when she finally got that through, and maybe, for you, it's something different. Maybe it's not even related to food, but just understanding that the end goal, it can be so variable. And that's what makes it so beautiful. That's why there are so many different professions and so many different people and personalities and friendships. That's what makes the world so cool. Especially having our third with Down syndrome, we learned very quickly that different isn't bad. Different is just what makes the world so unique and so special for every single one of us.
Yeah. I think that's a great reminder. My favorite students, I know you're not supposed to have favorites, were always my Down syndrome kiddos. Because they just look at the world through such a different lens that it reminds you to like slow down and look at the world through a different lens.
It really
it was always such a great reminder. Loved having those kids.
He'll be a kindergartner this year. So yeah, it's going to be a big deal.
Gosh,
I know. First year in school.
That's exciting, but I'm sure there's a lot of unknowns.
I feel good about it. We have a great plan ahead. And we're going to work with those teachers so much to help get him exactly what he needs.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure, especially as I came from that world, he'll be a favorite right off the bat. So sweet. As we start wrapping up, for the teachers who are listening who recognize themselves in this conversation, what is the first step that you recommend they'd take?
The first step is to just choose one thing. And that kind of is the hardest thing, because you might come out of this and be like, oh, I could try the what if, and I could try the 5 senses, and I could try, being more positive or thinking about possibilities. I could try, thinking about the marshmallow or the eggs. I could try all these things, and you overwhelm yourself. You might even write them all down on a piece of paper and you just want to check through them, but you're not going to actually adopt them as natural skills unless you do one thing at a time. My biggest goal with coaching clients is that when you go through the exercises, when you go through the reframes, that it feels as easy as breathing. So once you get to something, it's so easy in your mind to turn the if then into a positive what if. You just automatically do it. It's like breathing. It's like blinking. Your body just naturally does it. And once you get close to that feeling of it being like, oh yeah, this is just what I do. I'm somebody who doesn't say if then, I'm somebody who says what if, then I want you to try the next one and then try the next one. And I know every single person has a different idea on how long it takes for a habit to be formed. That's not the point. If you have a lot of opportunities to do that what if, you're going to get through it faster because you have a lot of opportunities that are popping up for you to make that mindset shift. But at the same time, once you get it down and it becomes this habit that's just part of your being, it feels really cool that you can then add something else on. So my biggest takeaway is always choose one thing that you took from today's conversation or that piqued a little bit of interest and give it a try. And then once you get that down, add something else on.
I love that. Yeah. I think anytime people hear new strategies, they just want to try them all.
Oh yeah.
It's like Pokemon. I got to get them all. Yeah. It's like, no. One thing at a time. Slow down.
One thing at a time. One thing.
Where can people connect with you and learn more about your work and your mindset coaching and be able to access you full time?
Yeah. So I do a little bit of it over on Abby Rose Green. So over on Instagram is where I'm most active, and I add them into my stories. I add them into my posts once in a while. You can also just always run something by me in DMs. I'm very active in DMs. I really like to try to get to almost every single person that asks an important question. Yes, so make sure sure you send them my way. That's the coolest part about the online community, is actually having a community. It's not just, being a face in front of a camera screen. I really like the real conversation. So make sure you ask me the hard stuff over in DMs over there. And then the Herself podcast is our podcast that Amy and I do together, my business partner. And it's been going on for about 5.5 years. So if you are a listener, thank you for being a listener. And if you are open for another podcast all about just getting one step ahead in the titles that you wear, we come out every Monday on anywhere you listen to podcasts.
Yes. I've been a listener since day one.
Oh, I love that, Charity.
Well, thank you so much for just first validating that these are things that people are feeling. I think so often we get in this idea that we're alone in things and that we're the only ones feeling this way. And sometimes even just hearing that you're not alone is enough to make people feel heard and seen and, all of that. But then also thank you so much for all of the practical tips, the transitioning from the if then to the what ifs and the analogies that really help solidify those things in your mind and make them easily accessible in those moments of, we say it a lot, herding cats.
Herding
Teachers
cats.
are great herders.
Mm-hmm.
And yes, I've pulled in some of these things. Even I love your mention of the car. The car is so hard for me, or public places when my kids start getting a little rambunctious. I am also a former teacher, type A, perfectionist, had it all together. And now you have these variables that are not consistent.
These are wonderful, lovely variables.
Random things, yes. And I will do that sometimes. The 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 is something that I think in particular is very accessible. Wherever you are, you have your brain, you have the things around you, and it's something that I think really helps ground. So thank you so much for being on with us today and sharing all of those.
Awesome, Charity. Well, thank you for having me on, and for everyone out there, choose that one thing, go forward with it, and I can't see what kind of progress that you can make.